Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter, and I'm Hannibal Tabu, the head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. This week we're going to discuss books that came out not only this week, but maybe touching on some stuff that came out the week prior. Just because, we like to give you a breadth of experience because we're givers that way. Honestly, that's the way it is. So, Stanford, how are you doing?
I'm holding up. I'm holding up pretty well. We're finally getting some fall weather in Chicago. So my favorite time of year is here.
Hey, everybody's got to like something. I'm sensing some. Hello, Amani. Thank you for joining us. This is Comic Books This Week, and we're going to be talking about books that came into stores this week. I hear a slight echo on myself, so I'm going to just go over and turn that down because my monitoring software is acting weird. Anyway, so what are we starting with this week, Stanford? How are we going to get going?
Well, do we want to start with Marvel, DC, or the Independents?
I'm going to say let's do the Marvel so we can get that stuff out of the way because it's all pretty much blah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's foreshadowing. Why don't we start with the Trial of Magneto?
Someone should start the Trial of Magneto. I absolutely think that is totally something that should be started. Yes, Stanford, yes.
Well, you've got Magneto, you've got a murder of someone who's alive.
Do you?
Who's still walking alive after the murder, and you're right. I guess we'll wait for them to live up to the title, and then we will give them a review.
I've said many times, if you haven't had an investigation of Magneto, or a charging of Magneto, or representation for Magneto, or representation against Magneto for the state, or a judge, or a jury, or a courtroom, is it really a trial, or are you just trying my patience?
It is not a trial, except for your patience.
Yeah. It's trying. It's trying. All right. There's so many things to dislike here. I'm trying not to spoil, but the rewind of a certain character to many years ago, which is just really exhausting, really deeply, deeply exhausting, especially given what we got from Marvel Cinematic, and I'm again trying not to spoil specifics on the character. There's there's a certain role like the sixth man on a basketball team who just sits on the bench a lot, and the Avengers are that this time. Like, if you got Captain America and Iron Man, and they're just kind of standing around cracking jokes, you might as well have Mark Madsen or Wally Zerbiak. I'm like, this is not what the Avengers are for. It doesn't matter. You could have brought Gravity. You could have brought Puma. You could have brought anybody for this. So
Now, let's not cloud the issue with facts.
It was Zerbiak. Zerbiak's where I went too far?
Yeah. Look, I'm just saying, I love how we've got no trial, we've got an old version we have a past version of the character showing up, and a future version of that same character showing up.
Oh, we're going full spoiler, okay.
Thing. So it's like we've got everything and the kitchen sink, but no trial.
And no house. And no walls. And, there's a lot of things lacking here, yes, that would be exactly the thing. And I'm reading along with this issue, and I'm like, what are we doing? What is this supposed to do? Why are we doing this? What is anybody getting out of it?
I think it's there to give us something to compare and to make United States of Captain America look good, and it failed at that too.
Oh my God! There's blood everywhere. Oh my God!
United States of Captain America, interesting idea. We've gotten to the end of this journey, and I felt like I was reading a public, one of those the more you know public service announcements.
That made me sad, but it's factual. But that's why it made me sad. So in this book there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 people calling themselves Captain America, right?
Yeah.
Of them, only 4 of them have anything that's not normal about them. The rest of them are just basically, with all due respect, cosplayers. And I've seen some really great cosplay. I would not expect them to fight. I would not expect them to go into a room with people with guns and superpowered Nazis and try to expect them to fight. That way lies madness. So I'm just, this book, I was more tired by it because I was like, okay, this happened, I guess. But I don't, honestly, whereas I would say No Just No would be my rating for the Trial of Magneto. I don't even remember, like, until you said it, I didn't even remember this book happened. I was like, oh, wow, that was this week, wasn't it? Huh. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think, I actually think it's kind of hard to write a good Captain America story, and not fall into all the traps laid by patriotism or by becoming a public service announcement. I think I think that's just part of the nature of the character. I don't think that doesn't mean I'm going to tell people to buy this book, but I do think that this storyline really pointed that out. I mean, here we are seeing like the all-star Captain's America, and it just felt kind of, I wasn't sure if it wanted to be that or if it was a road trip movie. I mean, or a road trip comic. I mean, it kind of, yeah. It's like when I sit down objectively and I say these are all the ideas there, I'm like, that's cool. And then I look at what happens when you bring those ideas together, and you have a good artist and you have a decent writer. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's not like that. I mean, but it just makes me think like, I love sushi, and I also love nachos.
Okay, I don't know where we're going, but I love it. Keep going.
But we don't mix them together. Just because it's two things that I love does not mean they go together like peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate.
You do know that I now desperately have to figure out how to mix nachos with sushi now. That's now my new mission. I have to do it.
Well, sorry for your bowels.
I didn't say I was going to eat it, but it's more of a thought experiment.
I mean, you could do sushi tacos, but
sushi taco.
Yeah, sushi
that
tacos
does sound good.
Yeah, but sushi nachos, no, that melted cheese is not going to go with that. Is not going to go with that raw fish.
There you go.
It just isn't. But they tried. I actually would like to see a couple of different writers and different creative teams get a hold of some of the other Captain Americas that they created. I actually think that there are some really interesting stories in some of those alternate Captain Americas.
Okay. Yeah,
I just didn't get it here.
Yeah, I think the Native American one who, actually does things in his community that aren't, SHIELD related, I thought were kind of interesting. But, I mean, for me, again, the Russo brothers showed me, it's not that hard to make a Captain America story. Make Captain America morally unflinching and put him in morally compromised situations. Right. Then let it go. Just have fun, But the Captain America that we've seen over the last few years with the Ta-Nehisi Coast, the Captain America here, is a Captain America who dithers, who worries, who thinks about things. You need to get a little bit closer to Ultimate Cap, maybe not all the way to right-wing Ultimate Cap, because we've already got U.S. Agent, but we do need just more of a
you mean have a comic book actually focus on a man of action?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I mean, look, we've used the Trial of Magneto to try to elevate United States of Captain America, and now we're going to compare it to the death of Doctor Strange.
Okay. I will admit one thing. If I could shave off a week of my life and just put it in a box somewhere and say, break that out when I croak, deal with some things, that's kind of fun. I have to admit, that's kind of fun. But literally nothing else was. Literally nothing else in this book. I was like, what?
It's an interesting concept, but after having read Trial of Magneto, where we see past versions of somebody come out to interrogate things having to do with other versions of people and future versions. I mean, I was like, oh, wait.
Yeah, that's all bad.
So bringing Doctor Strange from the past to solve his future murder, I'm not going to say it's uninteresting, but it's just contextually. I mean, editors got to like think of how they schedule stuff, because I mean, it's and I also feel like with the death of Doctor Strange, this remnant of him that comes back kind of undermines the fact that it's the death of Doctor Strange, because we already see how he's going to be. That somehow that remnant is going to be transformed into Doctor Strange, and so Doctor Strange isn't going to be dead no more, right?
Something like that.
And I do think that there's a legit question to ask: is Doctor Strange really dead if Doctor Strange is walking around?
When you make a good point, it seems like, and this is something I was talking about on Twitter with reading comprehension problems with people. It seems like if you're going to have a trial without any of the things that make a trial, and if you're going to have a death without anybody actually being dead, then it seems like you're not, in the words of a noted comics anthropologist I know, fulfilling the promise of the story.
Yes.
That would be really the concern there.
They done gone lied to me twice this week.
Did you dirty?
Twice.
It did you dirty. I don't like it.
Yep. Well, let's move on. Obviously, I think that those are definitely not in the buy pile.
Absolutely.
Let's go over to Phoenix Song.
All right.
Speaking of death and resurrection.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'll catch up. Go ahead.
Echo's a great character.
She could be.
The Phoenix Force is an interesting plot device.
It's a literal hot mess. Mm-hmm. Go on.
But again, kind of like mixing sushi with nachos, just don't go together.
Yeah.
I do not understand how they picked. I mean, I just felt like I felt like the pick of Echo to be in charge of the Phoenix Force is just totally. It's totally random, and that doesn't work for me. But then when we get into the actual story, I also have some real issues with how they characterize Echo.
Uh-huh.
Right? She's. Some guy comes up behind her on a gun, and she turns around and she's like, stop sneaking up on me. It's like, she's deaf.
All she does is sneak up on people.
No, but all she does is have people sneak up on her, and then she turns around.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like she keeps in the story responding to sound, and
that's a problem.
Having deaf people in my life, I know that they do respond to sound, but not in that way. It's not like, someone speaks and they turn and look at the person dead in the face, right?
Yeah.
There's ways in which they can sense things approaching them. They can sense vibrations. They can sense, but the way that they do her character, I feel like they're actually taking that element away from her. Right, like the interesting thing about Echo is that she's blind, and but any move that she sees she can replicate, right?
Like Taskmaster.
She's going up against Daredevil, who's blind, right?
Yes.
It's kind of a really interesting contrast, right?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that and there are ways in which Daredevil compensates for his blindness.
Mm-hmm.
But they show that. And they needed to show that with Echo. They needed to show how she's compensating for her lack of hearing. There's only one part where she actually tells someone, turn around so I can read your lips. As if that explains everything, right? Yeah. The other weird thing about having Echo have the Phoenix Force is, what is Echo's primary power?
Mm-hmm.
She beats the crap out of you.
Yes.
She slaps the taste out your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
She rips off your dangly bits, and then she cracks your neck. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes, sir.
And now she's got telekinetic powers. So the Phoenix powers actually prevent us from being able to experience what makes her cool in the first place,
Correct.
which is that she is a dancer, that she moves like a dancer, and fights like the best warrior out there. That's the cool thing about that character, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff that they've played with in previous comics about how she compensates for her lack of ability to hear in terms of sensing vibrations, and about how that changes the way she sees the world, right? Now she's inhabited by the Phoenix Force, and all that stuff gets jettisoned, and now we're just left with, an attractive woman who's on fire all the time.
I agree with everything that you said, and let me add to it even more stuff that's a problem. The Phoenix Force. Well, okay, I'm going to start as though I don't know anything, and then I'm going to come in as though I know all the things I actually know. I'm looking at this book about a character that I don't know, if I'm new, who wanders from this thing to that thing and has people yell at her and try to tell her what she should do with her life, and doesn't really have an agency or a reason for what she's doing. She's just kind of drifting around. That's boring, okay? Let's start there. Second, let's say I do know something. Oh, okay, there's a comic book about Phoenix. All right, Phoenix, X-Men, cool. Wait, what? There's no X-Men? Wait, this isn't even a mutant? The first time in our knowledge of anything, the Phoenix Force goes without being on a mutant? That's weird. Why? Oh, you're not going to explain why. We're just going to forge right ahead with this? Okay, cool. And then, after I get through all of this, and it's not a short book. You got to flip through it. It's got some chunk to it. But when I get to the end of this, do I feel like I need to be motivated to get engaged with this character and what's next for him? I don't. I don't have any feeling at all. I have no emotional reaction in any remote way. I feel dead and I feel uninterested. And that's not what you want from entertainment. So, for me, I would say this book is a meh because I'm literally not going to remember any of it.
So what you're saying is this story about life and resurrection has made you feel dead inside.
That's real talk. And that's an aphorism for our times, honestly. It really is.
Well, we've got one more Marvel book left.
All right.
Fantastic 437.
Fantastic. Oh, the trick-or-treating episode, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll say this one was cute. I'm not going to lie. I love those kids. Those kids must be protected at all costs.
Well, I saved the best Marvel for last.
You did, but, a book about a Kree and a Skrull kid, tricking people into trick-or-treaters, and then the completely non-event of, oh, there's aliens coming to repossess these kids, but then they don't. Okay, so literally, they stole the candy, they gave the candy back. Somebody came to take them, somebody didn't take them. So nothing actually happened.
Old boy started calling Ben Grimm a daddy.
Okay, he must be protected at all costs. I'm not gonna lie, I love these kids, but
you know what? I'm gonna agree with you, but I'm gonna add something here.
Please do.
Everything you said is true. It's all these little character bits, but you know what? This is what a classic Fantastic Four interlude episode does. If you look through the history of Fantastic Four, they go out on these adventures, and then they have like these interlude issues where they're just in New York. Ben Grimm is getting into fights with the people with the young ruffians on Yancey Street, or he's playing a poker game, and Reed is being his usual emotionally distant self, and Johnny Storm is out Johnny Storming, and Invisible Woman is trying not to be a stereotype. I mean, that is the classic Fantastic Four interlude issue, and I enjoyed this for that.
It's interesting you said interlude, because an interlude implies that this is something that's between two other things, a respite, a moment that is not the thing that you're actually interested in. I don't normally go for the things that I'm not interested in. I go for the things that I'm interested in. So for me, the second you said that, I was like, oh, this is an interlude. Oh, then in that case, this is like an episode. If you've ever watched the Clone Wars, the Star Wars Clone Wars series, if you see an episode that's all droids, just turn it off. Just fast forward to the next episode, because nothing that happens in that episode will affect anything or matter in any remote way. When you said that, I was like, oh, other than the little cute dad part, this is a droids
there
episode.
There are a couple of seeds that were laid in here. You've got seeds laid by like the projection, like the last will or whatever it is from Reed Richards' dad. So we know they're going to be going in that direction. You also have some seeds laid in terms of Alicia Masters, right? Where she thinks about using the magical clay and the mind powers to control people, and decides not to because it's bad parenting. I mean, I think that we had. I think that like I said, I think this is one of the things that Fantastic Four does. It's something I've come to expect from Fantastic Four, and I love it when it's done well. And Hannibal, I have to call you on this. When I mentioned this book, the first thing you did was you gave a very pleasurable sounding laugh. So it did touch you emotionally.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I did tweet today. I did tweet today that my boss's boss says if you see Hannibal walking in a room smiling, he's figured out who's going to suffer and how. So, yeah, I was laughing, all right. But
no, that was not a Trial of Magneto laugh. That was a different kind of laugh that you gave when you said. And what have you said multiple times? That boy needs to be protected at all costs. So obviously, even your cold heart was warmed a little bit.
Okay, but if I concede that, I would also say, then how about we do the things, the seeds that you mentioned, and the things that are happening in an actual story? Don't give me a trailer for something and expect me to pay for that. I wouldn't pay for a trailer to The Eternals. I wouldn't pay for a trailer to Shang-Chi. I wouldn't pay for a trailer to Black Widow. I'm not going to pay for a trailer. I'm not going to pay, rather, for a trailer of ideas for an actual story that's going to happen later.
But you did pay for those trailers with your data plans.
No, I did not do that. I did. Well, again, you and I, Stanford, we breathe rarefied air. These are reviewed copies. We ain't pay for nothing. So let's keep it 1,000 here. But
well, I'm just saying that I gotta say, I mean, Fantastic Four, it's a low buy, but it's still a buy for me.
It would be a high meh for me, and only for those kids.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to DC, and I think we should start with it's a comic that came out last week, and I think in relationship to that comic, we have a very important public service announcement.
Oh, okay, public service. We don't get paid for those. Okay.
Yes. And we have to warn you, okay? And what we have to warn you about is Strange Adventures number 12.
Oh no. Oh no. Well, if there's one thing that the books of the last 2 weeks have shown me, is that they're very interested in having Michael Holt serve as a babysitter for immature white people.
Yeah. He's Mr. Terrific Nanny.
Yeah, Space Nanny now. He's the Flash's nanny in the Flash's book. Yeah.
But yeah, Space Nanny, and they give Space Karen about 4 or 5 pages to just lay into him.
Space Karen reads him the riot act
for 4 pages.
Like he's the one that did something wrong. Like he's the one who did war crimes, or he's the one who decided to be on board for betraying an entire planet. Like he did any of those things, which he did not. He simply looked around and recognized some things that were out of place.
And she did it for over 4 pages.
I'm not going to lie to you. If a white lady tries to come at me for like 4 pages, it's not going to go well. It's not.
Oh, wait, let me count how many pages.
Because I got legs and I can walk. So, I ain't going to just stand around and have some white lady talk about my mama like that. It's just not going to happen.
I'm at page 7, 8,
She goes on for quite a
9,
bit.
10, 11. After 11 pages. Oh, no. 11, 12 pages.
I love the counting. You can hear the flipping.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. After 12 pages, she gives him a good talking to, and after that, he's he's a blanny, a black nanny.
That's terrible. Yeah, that's really bad. Yeah,
And
so
what's
don't
unfortunate about this is that this
everything.
is one of those moments where I'm going to say this: I have loved this book up until this issue.
Oh,
I have rarely had a book where where I have I've really had a book where I've loved I've loved it for the first 11 issues and then had one issue take it into negative territory.
that's so fun. I love the first issue, and I've hated the subsequent 11. I've hated them openly and notoriously and with great vigor. Hated them because, first of all, there's a kind of desire for the writer Tom King to work out things without going to therapy. He worked out some of these issues in Sheriff of Babylon, which, if you read it, is very, very, very similar to some stuff that happened here. He worked out some of those things in Omega Man. He worked out some of those things in Vision, which was the only time I think he got it right, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's entertaining to have to read somebody try to figure things out that way. I'm
You
not.
know,
I wasn't entertained by it, and moreover, while he did write some interesting moments for Mr. Terrific, I find that marginalizing and putting Mr. Terrific as a secondary character is an insult. I'd rather be ignored than insulted.
I
Always.
mean, I disagree with you slightly. What gets me is just the incredible tone deafness of having the last comic. And you know me, I'm actually not very quick to call on something like this, but this ended on her reading him the riot act for more than half the pages of the story,
Yeah.
and then he takes responsibility for her child.
Yeah.
Last I checked, if you want someone to like take responsibility for your child, you act nicely. What type of entitlement are we talking about where you think you can cuss a person out and then they're going to watch your child?
Space Karen.
Exactly. And I think it was I just think it was just utterly tone deaf. I don't care like what race you are. I don't care what class you are. I don't care where you grew up. If you've been watching the news for the past 2 years, you should have known better. If you've just been breathing for the past 2 years, you should know better. In
But
fact, I know people who are not breathing, who are dead, who know better.
yeah, yeah, that's all true. And I will just say, because I don't want to give it any more airtime, no one should buy Strange Adventures. It's terrible. It should be stopped at all costs.
Yeah. And if you did by any chance, you know, get the opportunity to read the other 11 issues, you probably should petition to get your time back.
Yeah, because Admiral Akbar is definitely on the phone, and he has a message for you.
It's a trap.
Thought that went without saying, but okay. This is Comic Books This Week with
Okay.
Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. We have discussed all of the Marvel books. Well, no, that's not true. We discussed a number of the Marvel books that came out this week, and we're diving into some DC stuff. What's next, Stanford?
Let's go for the palate cleanser.
All right.
Superman, Son of Kal-El, #4.
Was that this week or last week? That was
That
this week.
was that was this week.
Got it. Yeah, okay, yeah, because I read it. I'm just trying to remember. I was like, I'm mixing it all together now.
I I continue to love this book. It's if you put it on paper, and said I would love this book, I would tell you that you're full of it. But yeah, I mean, what I really like is that they have created a character in in John Kent that is interesting, likable, not sensible, and a stable very stable person who is still able to be emotionally vulnerable, and he's not trying to be his dad.
True.
And his dad happens to be Superman.
Yeah, that's all
I
fair.
mean, but this is the type of writing that you want to see, but we don't get enough of. It's like with Damian Wayne, right? It's like it's easy to write Damian Wayne because he's things that Batman isn't,
He's
right?
amazing.
Right? He is, but the reality is that he's written to be a contrast to Batman.
Yes.
It's a lot harder to write a character that comes from stability and is stable and vulnerable and all of that stuff, and not feel like he's just the same character all over again. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like I'm reading about Clark Kent Superman at all, but
Yep.
this is Superman.
True. Yes. Yes, this is
And
absolutely Superman book.
and that is, I mean, I can't say enough good about it. And it's a lot of the little things, like when the house is being destroyed and he's saving his grandparents, and the fact that he's hanging out with his grandparents with his, well, what we know now is his boyfriend, right?
Yep.
That whole scene was so well done. It didn't fall into the trap of, oh my God, look, they're a little close, and these old people, they're gonna have problems with it. Like, it was just really interesting, like being taken into a scene with people interacting who all genuinely like each other.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, that's true.
We don't. I mean, we don't see enough of that in comics. I feel like a lot of times it's all about focusing on the tension, to the point where we don't have those other moments, or those moments are like so small and fleeting compared to all of the tension beforehand.
Agreed.
I I think that they have found a really really amazing secret sauce for this book.
I don't disagree with anything that you said. I enjoy the characterization of John Kent. I love Ma and Pa Kent. They're fantastic. The issue that everybody's all worked up about, I don't work up about at all. I have no. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't change the narrative. It deepens it. My beef from last time remains that there is a black woman here who is used as a prop. That she has no agency, she has no control, she has no idea what's going on, and she is used as a weapon and threatened and traumatized in many cases by the events here. And with all due respect to the good, kind-hearted Jonathan Kent, he brushes by it. What's interesting to me about that is that if you're watching Supergirl, a similar thing happened with Supergirl and one of the supporting characters there who plays Jimmy Olsen's sister, Kelly. She likewise thought that a superpowered, Kryptonian-powered person was not paying enough attention to the actual things going on with actual people in trying to avenge this great wrong, but causing enormous amounts of damage to actual people. I think that's crap. I do. So while I do love this writer's work, and I've followed a lot of it, and while I do appreciate a lot of things that you're saying about Jonathan Kent, it's hard to get by this. It's difficult for me, especially because then the self-same kid does something that Clark used to do. Clark used to fly over to Lexus Tower and go outside the window and talk to him. And here, he flies to the tower of a bald-headed supervillain with a whole bunch of money with no actual powers and has kind of a vague threat for him, but doesn't actually think it through and ends up screwing up. It's a little late to be that kind of dumb still at this day and age. I'm sorry. So with those problems, I appreciate the characterization, but the actual events of the story give me great pause because they don't imply either the development of this character, who's been to the future, who's traveled all over the galaxy, who should know things that we can't even comprehend. This book does not show him as that seasoned hero. This shows him as a neophyte who barely knows what he's doing. And I believe that's a disservice to Jonathan Kent. I absolutely believe it's a disservice to the characters he has to deal with. I think it's a disservice to Henry Bendix as a supervillain. But I'm concerned with it as the book, and as such, I cannot recommend it as a purchase.
Oh, you wound me. I I acknowledge the things that you're saying. I am still enjoying this book.
The Dark Gift is different for us all.
Yes, it is.
What's
Yes,
next?
yes, it is. That's a good question. I think what do we got? We got. Well, I think one thing we could talk about a group of books is we had Nubia, Black Manta, and Green Lantern come out this week.
History.
Yes.
For the first time, possibly in my knowledge or history, there are 3 comic books written by black writers on the stands from a major publisher at the same time. Milestone used to do this all the time, absolutely. But with all due respect, white people money behind it, this is different. This is unusual, and it's worth noting. As well, there's also the Far Sector trade paperback, which I was all in for Far Sector, from N.K. Jemisin, which has an all-black creative team. Black artist, black writer, black letterer. It's amazing.
Well, that was nice to see, and it's not just that; it's also the characters, right? These are all black writers, and these are flagship characters.
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and okay, technically Black Manta is not a flagship character, but he's intimately tied to Aquaman.
Some people say Aquaman's not a flagship character.
Well, you know.
Arthur smells like fish sticks.
What does he taste like?
Hey, you know what? I'm not one to judge. If that's what you want to do, I'm over here.
But one thing, I'm going to tell you one thing I thought was kind of funny was the covers to these books.
Okay.
So, I love the Black Manta cover.
Lots of fun.
I think it's one of the most amazing covers I've seen in a long time.
He's all in.
With Black Manta jumping down with the sword to into the mouth of this sea monster. It was amazing.
Yeah. Without fear, without concern. He's like, I got this. I'm good.
Yeah. The only thing is there's no sea monster in the story.
I did notice that, and Jeff Thorne was on Twitter talking about, this scene on the cover, that's not actually in the book.
I was going to say that too. Another one where you can't judge these books by the cover.
Literally.
This is like Kilowog's Last Stand. I don't think, was Kilowog even in the book?
Kilowog is not anywhere in that issue.
And the funny thing is that they've got something going on in here that is so interesting, right?
Uh-huh.
But back to Black Manta real quick. I mean, I have to say one thing that I'm really enjoying about these 2 issues of Black Manta is the way in which they are throughout the DCU really building up, Jason Hyde as the successor to Aquaman, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, also giving us more and more insight into Black Manta, and especially into Black Manta since he's the father, right? I find that to be really interesting. I find it to be really interesting the way they're fleshing out essentially all of these Aquaman characters in a way in which I feel like I'm learning something about them, and I feel like even as I learn about one, it teaches me about the others through their relationships, and that's one of the things I enjoy about Black Manta's book. I tend not to like stories about supervillains, and somehow they've managed to make this one interesting.
I would be more on board if Black Manta had actually been a father to Jackson Hyde and not a deadbeat dad who never actually knew him and didn't grow up with him. What I appreciated about the movie was the great close relationship that Yaya's Black Manta character had with his father. Even though they were both criminals, even though they were both clearly people with moral flexibility, they were a father and son. They believed in each other. They knew each other. They grew up with each other. In the same way that it's important to me that T'Challa in the cinematic universe actually got to adulthood with his father. That's a drastic change from somebody who sees their father die as a child.
Exactly.
So I love
Yeah.
conceptually that, but again, in the same way with my problem with the Jonathan Kent book, that through all these things, yes, I get he's a villain, but does he have to be a villain and a deadbeat dad too? Really? We have to do all those things at the same time? I would appreciate if that wasn't the case, but that's the case and the decision the company has made for this character. I just don't like it.
Well, they did do one story a couple weeks ago in like the Aquaman 80th anniversary issue where they established that Black Manta keeps really close tabs on Jason Hyde. Like he knows everything that Jason Hyde is doing, and that he actually does attempt to meet with Jason Hyde like a couple times a year, and Jason Hyde doesn't want to talk to him because he's a bad guy.
He partially doesn't want to talk to him because he's a bad guy. He also, as I've seen many TV shows go through, wasn't there to play catch, wasn't there to help him with his algebra, wasn't there, he wasn't there. And as someone who's got a number of people in his family who have faced a similar challenge, and then when a apologetic parental figure wants to come in later and say, oh, maybe we could start over. No, you can't. No, you can't. The damage is done.
Yeah, I see
Move
that.
on.
I mean, and I think it also speaks to your like personal history, right?
Yeah.
So I've been lucky. I've been lucky in that respect, right? I think that, but I do think.
Yeah, because your dad is
I don't know,
great.
I think there's something about it that's intriguing. It's intriguing. Well, yeah, he is.
Your dad was awesome.
There are worse fates in the world than to have Crawford as your dad. Like a billion of them. But yeah, I mean, I like that they're trying to flesh Black Manta out, because for the longest time he was the most mysterious of villains. Like you know what I mean? It's like there's something about his character that's been like uber mysterious.
Like Boba Fettish.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not surprising because like he's got the most fly ass costume. I'm sorry.
He looks amazing.
Yeah, you just don't get much better than that, And I do think it's interesting the way they're kind of reimagining him a little bit as a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they're establishing. You're a pirate. You're not, And I think that's kind of interesting too.
Love it.
And I'm interested. I'm also interested in this is the guy who complains when villains become heroes. Is I like that they're doing the same thing with with Black Adam. So yeah. And,
Well, I love Black Adam in the depths of my coldest parts of my heart. I love Black Adam because he is the power, because he is the glory, because he was the first, and that. Black Adam has always been a hero in his mind. Did he take some sinestro approaches to dealing with that? Sure, whatever. You got to crack open some eggs to make an omelet. I, of all people, would not be the one to judge somebody for that. But the things that you're saying that you appreciate here, I appreciate them from an ideological standpoint. They're not always on the page, and that's disappointing to me.
Well, and in the realm of shameless plug, I do have about 27-minute piece that I did with the Oriental Institute. It's a major museum here in Chicago focusing on Middle Eastern studies, where I do nothing but talk about Black Adam.
How can people find that, Stanford?
Just go to YouTube and you either go under Oriental Institute, do a search under Oriental Institute, and I'll be one of the top ones up. Or you can do my name or Black Adam, and it'll come up.
Absolutely.
It's been out for 6 days.
For the people who are seeing this on YouTube, that's a special little treat for you. You're welcome.
But let's leave Black Adam behind for a moment and let's talk about Green Lantern. Let's talk about Kilowog's Last Stand.
No, let's talk about Lonar. Because Lonar, I love you, Lonar. Lonar's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, what they did, what Jeff Thorne did in this was just incredible. This whole idea of like having Lonar show up and then taking them to a battle in the past with the New Gods, Apocalypse, and the Guardians.
Yep.
And what I really appreciate though is he did something that made Lonar interesting. Is he actually started getting into what Lonar is as a new god, because that's something that new gods never really fleshed out very well.
Yes.
Like each of the new gods is like something special. Like Orion is is basically a god of war, right?
Yes.
Light Ray is the sun, is basically the god of the sun, and now
Yes.
we found out that Lonar is actually the god of the journey.
Yeah, he
And I'm
is.
like, oh, now I know why I should care about you, and I love you now.
Protected at all costs.
Exactly.
My favorite part is that Lonar had this kind of Willy Wonka-ish sort of thing, like, oh no, don't. What would happen if you did? Like, he was actively messing with him the entire time, and I think that's hilarious to me. Um, likewise, I liked seeing, pre-Dark Side, Dark Side. That was a nice little touch. I like seeing that. I appreciated that because I know that Jeff Thorne's first written work was a Star Wars Titan. I'm sorry, a Star Trek Titan novel. That I could see the Borg influence that he applied to the Guardians there, and I thought that was really cute. I was like, oh, I see what you did there. Ah. In their desire to impose rationale and reason upon a galaxy that may, frankly, resist it. But yeah, there was a lot of fun things going on in this book that I really appreciate, and that emotional gut punch at the end, because this is really not just one book; it's two books. There's the Jon Stewart book, which is great, which is fantastic, and there's Joe Mullen taking over running OA, which is a big promotion from her last Far Sector posting. And like the last few pages of this, I was like, oh, you're just punching me in my emotions, and I love it. Do it more. Oh my God. Which I was not expecting from this book. That's not what I was expecting it to do.
And both stories were amazing.
Yep.
This was one of the most interesting iterations of the New Gods that I've seen.
Yes.
In terms of the way, in terms of looking at the New Gods from the perspective of the Guardians, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but they have definite feelings about the New Gods and the apocalyptic and the hordes from Apocalypse.
Yep.
I love how it ended. I'm not going to spoil that, but
I love that Desaad looks exactly the same. He's always been like a wrinkly, sad old dude. I think that's hilarious to me.
And I gotta say, at the end of the story, there's a really nice costume.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then we slide over to what's going on in terms of rebuilding Oa. And you know what? I really want to. Oh wait, I'm gonna also talk about something else having to do with the first story, which is I love the way they characterize Lonar.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that that's how they're characterizing essentially a Native American character.
Yeah, okay. I see where you're going there. I like that.
I love that he has a personality independent of the stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see enough of that. And I don't feel like they're trying to make him go against the stereotypes either. But I think it's also interesting because he's got a power set that is not like that's also not part of the stereotypical powers that you give a native type character, right? I mean, I really like what they did with Lonar. Now I want the Lonar series.
Nothing but Lonar.
Yep. But let's go forward and let's talk about what's happening with Jo. I love that she's having to hang out with Thanagarians, but most of all, what I love is Simon Baz.
I was not because I really didn't like him when he was introduced, but he really came on strong here. You're right.
Yeah. Well, and I like how they're showing his relationship with Kid Lantern. You know,
Teen Lantern.
I'm sorry, with Teen Lantern.
Which is ironic because she's 11.
Yeah, she's not a teen; she's a kid. But I love how they show the tenderness between the two of them. It's very much like a brother-sister relationship.
Absolutely.
Right? And again, that's the type of relationship that a lot of these that a lot of comics don't do well. And I also got to give a lot of props to the artist. The artist Like there's this one scene where he's holding her hand while she's lying down on a hospital bed, and it's
It's
like
amazing.
I've never. I mean, I could feel so much emotion just coming off of it. You know.
Yeah, this book showed
So
up in a major way. I'm very happy with all those things. I also love, because I was worried about the Thanagarian lead from the UP, but I'm more becoming amused by it because she goes from humph to murder, 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 like with no provocation. She's like she's always on tilt, 1,000,000%. And at first I was worried that was going to be one note, but the more it happens, the funnier it is to me. And I'm really enjoying that a lot.
she has absolutely no chill.
None. She is a walking oven. She's got no chill.
Yep. I mean, this is just a great book. This is what happens. This is what happens when you have amazing writing in a comic book.
I will also note, this book was about 30 pages. So they weren't shorting you with that regular 20-page jazz that you get for a lot of books. They threw some page counts at this.
Yeah,
They
but
paid
if
for
you
this.
think about it, there's 2 stories in it, and each page is like 15. Each story is 15 pages.
Yeah,
So
about
each
that.
of those 15-page stories feels like a 30-page story. I mean, he packs a lot in there.
It's great. It's really great.
So yeah, that's well, that is. I think that's all of our DC comics for this week.
All right, we got about 8.5 minutes. What are we gonna do?
Okay,
I could go long, honestly. I don't care.
Let's go. Black Beacon #2.
Black Beacon. I don't actually know if I read that one. Tell me about Black Beacon, please.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I was hoping you could tell me.
Oh, okay. Well, shoot. I got it here. Let me crack it open. What was your impression of Black Beacon?
Here's the thing. It's actually a beautifully written,
Oh, it's heavy metal. Yeah.
beautifully rendered book, right?
Space
it's the second
stuff, yeah.
issue,
Uh-huh.
and I'm coming in on the second issue, and I feel like they didn't do enough to let me know what happened in the first issue, and like I needed the first issue to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
But even with that, I mean, there are some compelling things that come through in terms of this kid. His whole thing is he's out there to get the story, right? I think this is a really interesting successor to heavy metal.
Well, I'm looking at it now, and there's a panel that says, "Are you real?" And the answer is, a better question to consider is anything real? And when you start to do stuff like that, you're like, oh, you're just going to screw with me. There's what I used to call the Vertigo aesthetic, which wasn't exactly the same as the actual Vertigo books, but where books, they kind of took like kind of a meandering, kind of unusual way to do things, and sometimes they would like nail a point, and you'd be like, oh my God, that's really deep. And sometimes it'd just be like pages and pages of like, what are we doing here? Yeah, I would like a recap page. I think recap pages are everything, and I would like a recap page here. This is a very pretty book, and I do agree with that. And I get, don't get me wrong, I love science fiction. I love that they're in space. I love all those things. But this doesn't feel like a single issue based on what I'm saying. And this is the problem with so many books, and I say this all the time. It's like you're not writing a single issue. A single issue has this thing starts, you introduce some characters, stuff happens to them, and then we resolve it. Even if it's part of a larger story, there should be a resolution in the individual issue. And this doesn't feel like it's getting to something in this issue. It's like, maybe we'll find out down the line. Maybe you won't. Maybe you are actually tripping on shrooms right now. It's hard to tell, honestly. So I appreciate the skill and craft put into those books, but they're not my bag, baby.
Right. I could see that, and like I said, I feel like it's hard to judge this one. Like I really would want to see the first issue to see what this has been put on.
I will ask our friends at Heavy Metal if you can get a copy of the first issue.
Okay. But so Black Beacon. I mean, there's definitely something there. I just haven't quite figured it out.
Did you ever watch on David Letterman when he would bring out stuff and ask Paul, "Is this a thing?" I think that's what you're doing here.
Yeah.
And like Paul, I'm like, I don't know.
Well, let's go on to the next independent. Let's talk Orville #1,
Which I did read and I do love. I love the Orville. The Orville is some of the best Star Trek that Star Trek's.
It's some of the best Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's no Deep Space Nine.
Well, that's not fair. There's no Cisco. That's not fair. Come on, Stanford. Play nice.
I just got to keep it real.
All right. What'd you think about this book?
I enjoyed it. I thought they did a decent job of giving me an Orville story. Orville has a bit of lightness to it compared to Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like some of the lightness of Orville has to do with the fact that if you're going to compare Orville to anything, you have to compare it to the original series. And the reason I say that is, in the original series, the Federation was a plot device.
Mm. Well,
Go ahead. No, I'm seriously. Think back to the original Star Trek series, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only time we see anything having to do with the Federation is really like when some admiral shows up on the screen and says, "Oh, you got to go over there," and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's only like 1 or 2 episodes where they're actually in a Federation, like when they're in a
they're explorers.
Yeah. They're like out there, so they're really not dealing with the Federation. The Federation is actually just more of a plot device. We really don't have a sense of how the Federation operates.
Mm-hmm.
We know how the ship operates,
mm-hmm.
but we don't have a sense of that, right? What's interesting about the Next Generation is the Next Generation put the Federation front and center. In the Next Generation, the Federation might as well be a character on the bridge.
Okay.
And then Deep Space Nine follows through with that. And even Voyager, as distant as it is, still the Federation looms much more heavily than it does in the original series. And that's the thing about Orville, right? In Orville, we're seeing a story about a space federation of sorts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really do a lot to flesh out what that federation is. Other than we see this admiral guy in purple who shows up on the screen and tells them what they can and can't do.
Yeah, the show does that, but yeah, this issue doesn't.
And this issue kind of follows suit with that, right? And I think that's the real difference for me between Star Trek and Orville is that they just don't have a lot of meat on the bones as far as the Federation and the relationships between the different species, which we take for granted when we're watching Star Trek. I thought this was a good issue, though. I thought they have a really tight, interesting story with a very exactly where it's going. It ends on a good point where we get there. We've raised some questions about some of the characters we've run into that I'll be glad to see explored. I enjoyed it.
Well, I also enjoyed it. I also would recommend people buy this, but with a little more context. First, this is a complete story. We present something happens, we get somewhere, that happens, we resolve it, and now we have a whole new thing to do, which is the next issue. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Second, we got time with a lot of the characters for characterization. At least of the main crew, we saw at least 4 of them in some detail and got a good look at them and a sense of what they're like and what they're going on. Their dialogue was specific to them, which I appreciated. It was very much in the voice of the show. And for me, this very closely reminded me of Lower Decks. Because the Orville, like the Cerritos, is not the flagship. It's not the ship that everybody wants to be on. It's just a ship. And,
right.
It's a good ship. Everybody works very hard and everybody's very good at their jobs. But, they're also kind of goofy and they also kind of drink a lot and they also kind of do their own thing, which is fun. So I really appreciate that kind of energy interjected into this sort of space. The things that I learned about the Orville's version of the Federation are all from the TV show, and I don't believe on this kind of mission, where, as you say, they are out on the frontier on some whole new stuff. I don't believe that plays as much of a part, and that's only because the things that I know about their Federation, given the relationship with Ed and how many ships he's been through and the challenges he's got with Kelly and what their relationship is about, those are things I know from the show. They're not in this book, and they don't need to be in this book. It doesn't harm me. It doesn't harm my understanding of what's happening with the events here, rather. to not talk about those things. The fact that I do talk about those things makes a number of things that happen in this book much funnier. Much, much, much funnier. So this is a fantastic book if you're just walking in off the street and picking it up like, oh, wow, oh, this is funny and interesting and cool, yes. But, and also gorgeous, can I say, how well they've depicted this space-based experience. But if you actually watch the show, man, this is killing it. Man, you got to go get this. This is the guts. Yep. So, yeah, I really appreciate the new Trek that doesn't. I mean, even to a certain degree, some of the stuff you see with Tilly and the engineers in Discovery, the ability to have a little bit of a laugh to it, because when serious things happen, like on Orville, when I don't want to spoil the second season, but when that big thing happened, it was like, oh my god. Because you'd been so light and so funny, it's like, nope, gut punch. Oh, okay. So yeah, I really appreciate the balance of things. I never expected this to be some of my favorite Star Trek, but this, in the same way Galaxy Quest was some of my favorite Star Trek, this really takes that and takes it to the next possible level in the best possible way.
Well, I guess we got a book that we both agree we should tell people to buy.
Thumbs up.
You know, and we have time. Well, technically we're done, but we have time for one more. Let's talk Time Before Time, number 6.
I love Time Before Time. It's one of my favorite titles. I didn't get to read this issue. I feel terrible. I should be purged, Noomsy.
You should be, because it was incredibly well written. It was a simple, self-contained story.
Love it.
It was a simple, self-contained story focusing on two characters we saw them referenced in a prior episode or a prior issue, but now we focus on it. It's just focusing on technically 3 passengers, right? Mm-hmm. And they were kind of a one-off thing, or they seemed like they were one-offs, until we got to see what happens when they resettle in the past.
Well, I will say that I've bought 5 issues of Time Before Time. I would see no reason not to buy a 6.
Yeah. Exactly, and I mean, the one thing that was a little jarring was that they had a different penciler this time, and you could tell. Like,
of course.
You know what I mean? It's just because the usual penciler has a much more graphic, flat style, with a lot of plays with like solid colors and solid blacks and solid whites.
Yep.
Whereas this one is a little more scratchy, right?
Is that because of the time period? Is it like a stylistic choice to fit the time period they landed in?
No, it's because you see that stylistic choice leaking into the times when they go outside of the time period. Although you could tell they tried to give it a slightly different feel, but you could tell it just you know, it's not the same art.
I can dig it.
It's a different artistic style. It warrants a pass for me because this is the story of. The story outside of the main characters that we're used to seeing the stories be about. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's a really, really good, like, I hate to use the phrase again, interlude type piece, but it's an interlude type story. It's a complete story with a beginning, middle, and an end. You know, the characters have an arc, and I actually feel like seeing this story gives me a better idea and another perspective on what's happening in the bigger story.
Then that's a good interlude. That's an interlude that accomplishes more than sorry to say Fantastic Four did for me.
Well, you know, I'll put Time Before Time on the buy pile. So,
I will buy it sight unseen.
Yeah. So on the buy pile we have Orville, Time Before Time, Green Lantern that we agree.
Yes.
Green Lantern. And oh yeah, didn't you say that? I thought you said we're supposed to buy Trial of Magneto, right?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
No, what I'm going to throw in, just because I have to, because originally I was going to honorable mention it, but I can't stop thinking about it, so that's normally a sign I should buy it. Eat the Rich #3 from Boom Studios.
Okay.
Bam. This it's haunting and it's weird and and I'm not a horror person. I don't like horror books normally. I don't like horror stories normally. But this book, it takes this kind of Martha's Vineyard style community and puts a real Jordan Peele spin on it in a major way that's very, very creepy. And knowing, the more you know, it makes turning every page like, oh no, is it now? And even at one point in the book it says, is it now? Is it now? And then when it happens, it's like, oh my God, it's happening. So, and there's a last page reveal of some information that just dropped. Eat the Rich 1 and 2 were good, but Eat the Rich 3 is like, nope, we're taking it all the way now, baby. I'm like, oh my, okay, let's go. So, yeah, Eat the Rich number 3 from Boom Studios would be my other buyer recommendation.
Nice. I'll also put Black Manta in the buy pile as well. But yeah, I mean, gosh, we had a week.
It was a week, but we got some good stuff out of it.
Yeah,
we enjoyed some stuff.
I'm gonna say I'm still very much like enamored with what Jeff Thorne has managed to do.
Mm-hmm. It's great
in terms of consistency.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And to be fair, Strange Adventures was last week, so that doesn't really count.
Right, but I mean, I'm talking about with Green Lantern. I mean, we're 7 issues in, and I feel like we're 100 issues in a good way.
Yeah.
And the worst of the 7 issues is still better than almost anything else we've read.
That's fair.
Yeah. He's managed to work really well with his artists, and he's managed to give us some amazing storytelling. And what I think is interesting is he low key has managed to center all characters of color.
That wasn't Loki at all. That was Thor. That wasn't Loki at all.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he just did it, but it was done with very little fanfare.
Yes. I was on a podcast this week where somebody was like, but this Jonathan Kent book got it. I'm like, where were you when Jackson Hyde came out as the gay Aquaman literally years ago? If we're having this conversation now and not then it's disingenuous. It's bad faith. And as I said, a lot of religious people were doing it. The worst thing for a religious person to do is have an argument in bad faith.
Right. Yep. I'm with you on that.
But that is Comic Books This Week. I am Hannibal Tabu, head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. This is Dr. Stanford Carpenter, noted comics anthropologist. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and listening to these reviews. We'll be back next week at our normal time, hopefully, of about, is 3 o'clock? It's 5 your time, right? So it's 3 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Chicago time, where Stanford is.
No, Central time. Central time as in center of the universe.
Okay, I thought I said Chicago already, but okay. Anyway, my people from Chicago now. Come on, don't act like I don't know. Come on now. So, any final words, Stanford?
Well, no, I have no final words.
Okay, please check the season finale of False Flag on operative.net. That is coming up this week for free on False Flag Friday with art by Damar Douglas. Please check that out. And Project Wildfire will be in stores November 24th. Thank you so much for listening to Comic Books This Week. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
See you later.